Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm excited to bring you a review for the new Masters of the Universe, Masterverse, New Eternia, He-Man. This figure is part of the fourth Masterverse wave and comes alongside another New Eternia toy and then two Revelation figures. Now you might be wondering, what is this New Eternia thing? So the idea behind it is it's taking very old concepts, concept art and stuff from the pre-planning stages of what would become Masters of the Universe. And then it's building upon those ideas to come out with these fleshed out designs that are both new and familiar at the same time. So this He-Man toy is based off a very, very early concept of the character that would be He-Man. And that concept depicted a rather Viking-like character. Hence the, horned helmet here. So yeah, it's really what this is. It doesn't fit into any particular pre-existing continuity. It's just Mattel kind of having fun with some ideas and creating maybe this new, unique continuity in the process. That being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at He-Man's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll get a good look at the He-Man figure, we'll check out all of his posability, his accessories, of which there are quite a few. Naturally, I'll be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll get my final thoughts. So our new He-Man comes in your standard Masterverse packaging. You get this really cool new logo down here. So it says Masters of the Universe, but it's in this very earthy color, and then New Eternia, done up in a nice blue with a bronze or goldish trim. And then they just simply call him He-Man. So no prefix or anything, this is just some other version of He-Man. Within the main window, you can see this rather imposing figure that, on the one hand, resembles the He-Man that we recognize, but then has all these new trappings and stuff to really help set him apart from, our standard 1980s character. Specifically, he's got this, shoulder armor going on here, as well as this horned helmet. He comes with an axe, very similar to the original He-Man toy and the prototype toy from Lords of Power. He even comes with a dagger, which is something that is a really old callback to the prototype. That's kind of a lesser-known detail about it. The old toy actually had a dagger that he could slip in his boot, and though you can't really see it, there is a little strap for you to slide the dagger into this guy's boot. So very, very cool callback. And then he has a rather primitive looking version of the Sword of Power right here, which I don't think was part of the original concept art or the prototype. So that's just got to throw it in here because, it's He-Man. He has two additional hands, a weapon holding hand and an open one. And then we see this alternate head, which looks a lot more similar to the standard He-Man head with the, shoulder length or so blonde hair. So one thing that's really cool about this guy that I haven't mentioned yet, and this goes for the new Eternia Skeletor as well, they have all these optional parts so that you can choose to have them in this, very unique and different look, or change things around and make them look much closer to their classic appearance. So that's something I find very neat. It really adds to the replay value of this guy, and if you have the money, it may incentivize you to pick up two. One to keep as our Viking He-Man, and then the other one to keep as a more standard He-Man. Alright, so on this side, we just see his name with his typical title of Most Powerful Man in the Universe. And then on this side, we get this really, really nice artwork of the character. You get our Viking He-Man in his full attire. Now it's showing him with a shield here. I don't think he actually comes with one though. If he does, it's hidden somewhere, but I don't think he includes a shield. And then you have what, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be regular He-Man, or if it's just this guy, but without his helmet on. It's kind of hard to tell. Then we go ahead and we turn this around here, and we get this new artwork of our Viking He-Man or Savage He-Man, whatever you want to call him, being confronted by just all these different baddies, these creepy looking monsters, ready to fight him. And then we get his name and title again, along with his flavor text, and that reads, "The most powerful man in the universe explores the world of Eternia, seeking to stop the sinister Skeletor from forging the Scimitar of Chaos. He can feel the twilight of the world coming. He can feel it in his bones. He must find the megalomaniacal madman and put an end to his havoc once and for all. The fate of the universe demands it. So really nice write-up. Just really gives me that very intriguing, almost like a D&D fantasy kind of vibe. Really dig that. So the Scimitar of Chaos, let's talk about that, huh? That's something that's new. I don't know if that was part of some old early concept for, Lords of Power or MOTU or anything, or if that's something they made up specifically for this new Eternia thing. But it is actually an accessory that comes with the new Eternia Skeletor, so it's interesting. It's almost like the opposite of the Sword of Power, right? It's a sword that's going to bring about, the end of the world, so pretty cool, pretty cool. And then down here we get our cross cells. We get this He-Man figure. And then we get Teela, who I just reviewed previously. Then we get the new Eternia Skeletor. And then Revelation Merman, complete with missing eyeball. So, pretty interesting spread. It's half what we're used to in the form of Revelation, and then half something entirely new. And the future waves that we know about, or that are rumored, seem to be moving away from Revelation almost completely and embracing, new Eternia and Princess of Power and, other random stuff like the 40th anniversary He-Man, which is like your classic He-Man. So, yeah, Masterverse is really starting to live up to its name, where it's kind of representing this multiverse of possibilities within, the MOTU line. Now we get our figure and its accessories out of the box. So you can see we got our two different hands here, the open one, the weapon holding one. We get his little dagger, which can slide into this holster on his boot, which is a very nice touch and a very nice callback to the original prototype of He-Man. We also get a more primitive take on the Sword of Power, complete with this like leather wrapped grip here, which is, a good way to set it apart from the standard version. We get the alternate standard He-Man head, though really could just as easily be this He-Man with his helmet off. And then we get his big battle axe, complete with some nice nicks in the edge of the blade there, just to show that it's, very heavily used. It's got an interesting little sparkle quality to it. Might be a bit much. I don't know if it should really be sparkly or glittery. Alright, now we get our figure. So we take a look at our He-Man. He's got your standard double ball joint in the neck, universal shoulders, bicep swivel, double elbow bend. Oop, pop his wrist off. He has universal wrists, as you can see. He's got the ball joint in the upper torso, full waist swivel, universal hips, which don't spread out very, very far, but that's nothing new with these male MOTU figures. He's got the thigh swivel, he's got the double knee bend right here, he's got a boot swivel, and then ankle rock and rotation. So he's got the whole gamut of posability. And he just looks great. The sculpted detail on this guy is phenomenal. Like the armor with all the cool designs and almost tech-like detailing on it. His chest harness is all new, and it has like a very stylized take on the Templar cross-like design of the original He-Man toy. Pretty neat. And then the back is cool, the way everything kind of like bends and twists and makes it look like a real leather harness. I dig that. It's also got a little holster in the back to hold a weapon, either the power sword or the axe. But the axe kind of got to squeeze in there a little harder. The helmet has that same glittery effect as the axe, which I think probably could have toned that down a little bit and make it look more like iron, but oh well. The belt's all new, and it's that nice, shiny yellow color right there. The loincloth is leather looking as opposed to the more fur looking one of the standard He-Man. And then the boots are really cool too. They have more like a wool at the top instead of regular fur, and then they're wrapped up pretty heavily. So as far as the parts of him that are skin, like the chest, the arms, most of the legs here, that's all recycled from He-Man, and then all the new clothing, the head, that's all new. So very cool looking. I have to say, I really dig this guy's look. It gives him a much more realistic feel than the Revelation He-Man, who definitely has some cartoony qualities to him. All right, now I want to look at the optional parts for this guy. So first we'll start with the hands. So he comes with this, just clenched fist, which is good for punching or something, but not overly useful for holding accessories. So let's remove that. Give him the normal weapon holding hand right here. And now he can have his Sword of Power in his hand. Get in there. There we go. So you get that. Oh, jeez. Must not be the tightest wrist socket because his hands keep wanting to pop off. All right, so get that old sword there. You can have him wield his axe in the other hand if you want. Have him dual wield like some kind of berserker, which looks very cool and very, very fitting for this guy. You can also go ahead and take this dagger, which can be held in either hand, same size handle, or it can just slide in here. And it's really, really cool how that works, because it just goes all the way down, and this woolly area is molded with an indent so that this can go in there and look like it's just kind of naturally pushed up against the fur. So very, very cool touch. Really just like the look of this guy overall. Now I want to go ahead, I'll show you the open hand for a second. Kind of like the fist, it's not the most useful because it doesn't allow him to do anything, but it's just more your standard He-Man hand because, you know, most He-Man toys have the one weapon holding hand and the one open hand. So you can give him kind of that classic configuration if you want to. Normally this would be good for allowing him to equip his shield, but as we see, this version doesn't come with a shield despite what the package art hinted at. Of course, you can always just borrow the regular He-Man shield or maybe Grayskull's. All right, now I want to go ahead and switch this guy to being like a regular He-Man. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop the head off, and I'm going to leave it off for a moment because it'll make this part a little bit easier. So you got to get the shoulder armor off, and the way you do that, you push the straps back through their little slots here, and this can take a moment because there's a few different holes these straps have to go into. So you push it through the one, push it through the other, like so, and then you're going to slide the pauldron off. You just want to be careful. You don't want to like bend or crease or break the rubber here on the strap. Just be mindful of that. All right, so we got that. You can always just do one or the other too if you think it's cool to have, you know, one pauldron. Give them like a gladiator look. It's always an option. All right, so I'm going to slide this back in. Come on, buddy. This part can be kind of annoying, so you really gotta work with it here. Alright, once you can get a hold of it, you can pull it through. Same thing here. And just get it in like one notch, and that's good enough. Alright, then we do the same thing on this side. Again, just be careful with that rubber. You don't want to break it. Might take a moment, but patience, you know, pays off here. Especially as this toy gets older, that rubber is going to get a little more stiff and more likely to break, so definitely be very careful here in the next few years at least. Okay, so got two of them back in. Come on. This part's always the hardest, getting it through that first loop. Once you get it to the first one, it's usually not too bad. All right, so we got the first one. Push through the second. All right. So the harness now looks like more or less the regular He-Man harness. And we'll go and put the new helmet-free head on here. All right. Here we go. This, more or less, looks like standard He-Man. You know, the fine details are different as far as, you know, the detailing on his belt, his buckler, all that, the boots. And he does have that extra dagger in his boot, which just harkens back to the original prototype toy. And I like it. I really do. It's a much more earthy and just realistic looking take on He-Man, and I think it looks really good. Here now is a comparison shot with the Revelation He-Man. And like I said, as far as their body, like not counting any clothing, everything's the same. You know, same arms, chest, hands, all that stuff. But the biggest difference you can see, as far as the stylistic choices on the two He-Men, is that the Revelation one has a much more yellow tone to his skin, whereas this guy's more of a reddish color. And then the face sculpts are very different. Now, if you saw my review on this guy, you know I really loathe this face sculpt. I think just the head looks way too small. Like the face is really bunched up and tiny, and he's got this like goofy, happy look on his face, and I really never liked the face sculpt, and I felt it always really dragged this toy down, because everything else, you know, from like the head down is totally fine. Looks like a good He-Man toy. But the face always killed it for me. This face, way, way better. Far more realistic looking, much more intimidating looking too. A little bit less like an anime character, which is really the vibe I get from this guy. So personally, I think this is like the superior He-Man. I really do. As far as just the way everything came out, the fact that he's got more accessories, first of all, but like just counting the classic He-Man look, he just looks better to me. He really does. Really, if I were to think of like a modernized update of the old He-Man character, this is really more what I would picture than that. Guy looks, I don't know, it's kind of like a dumb meathead, and I don't like it. One thing we can do, that'd be pretty cool, is we can go ahead and take off his shield and give it to our new Eternia He-Man. You'll see it just slides right over everything. His buckler's a little bigger, so it's going to be a tighter fit to actually get it on there. In fact, it may not want to go on there. Let's see, maybe if I can slide this strap over the, there we go. It'll go now, okay. So it doesn't fit as well. It's kind of just barely hanging on there. But if you want to give him a shield, you can, and it looks pretty cool on him. The color doesn't match. I think the shield would be better if the inner part was red, but still looks pretty decent, I think. And here's another comparison with another He-Man who is based off of early artwork. This is Savage He-Man. Now, this is specifically a character that appeared in the Revelation cartoon. However, his toy is very different from his appearance in that cartoon. He should be like Incredible Hulk size and, you know, just incredibly buff. And you can see he just shares the same body type as this He-Man and the regular one, which is something I wasn't really crazy about because he's not very screen accurate at all. But it does put him a lot closer to the early concept of, you know, what they called Savage He-Man. And it's something you saw in like the really old mini comics. It's basically a He-Man with nothing but a loincloth, you know, looking very much like a caveman. And, you know, he was much cruder, right? He was basically a just barbarian living out in the wilderness that was tasked to stop Skeletor. So much like this new Eternia, or Viking He-Man, as he used to be called, very, very different backstory than, you know, the character that we recognize today. They were both, you know, less fancy princes with magic swords, and more like just brave adventurers that have been, you know, kind of elevated to the task of stopping a great evil. And I do have to admit, to some extent, I kind of prefer that backstory. So I'm not sure what the great plans are for New Eternia, if it's like purely just going to be an action figure thing, or if there's going to be some story placed behind that in the form of maybe a comic, a cartoon, something like that. I'd love to see like that very alternate take on the He-Man mythos based on, you know, early ideas. Because I like that. I like your very classic high fantasy, almost D&D-like story. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the story we have, but I wouldn't mind getting this as like an alternate telling, very similar in the vein of like the new CGI Netflix cartoon. So yeah, these two, you can see both just kind of brutish-looking warriors. They both prominently wield an axe, which is something that our, you know, Revelation He-Man doesn't come with. And of course, this guy's axe is absolutely massive compared to the Viking He-Man's, but he is also supposed to be this like absurdly strong, you know, mindless rage monster, at least in the cartoon. Now, he does also have a crude spear, which is admittedly a little bit cooler than this little dagger here. But this guy, of course, also gets some primitive version of the Sword of Power. So, you know, I think overall he kind of comes out to be equally as well equipped. And yeah, I mean, they both look really cool. I've never been a fan of how this toy's head can never really look up. Because of the way they sculpted his hair, he's always looking downward. Which in some way kind of makes sense if he's supposed to be this caveman-like creature. But it is really hard to pose him in a way where you can really look at his face. Like, I'm leaning back almost far enough to fall over, so... I would have really liked if they had, you know, sculpted his hair a little differently, but oh well. But yeah, I like this. I like having toys based on these early concepts, right? These stories that were kind of lost to time and lost in the shuffle of a company trying to make a fun toy line. And this completes our look at New Eternia He-Man. I am a huge fan of this figure. I think it's such a cool idea to bring back like these old concept ideas in, you know, a story for Eternia that no longer exists. This toy comes with a ton of stuff, right? Between all of his accessories, you know, the different weapons, all the armor pieces, the multiple alternate parts that you can use to transition him from either this He-Man to something a little more standard looking. It feels like a deluxe figure, but it comes at your standard like core assortment price point. So that's something I really appreciate. I think this toy is an excellent value, I think everything about it is great. Like the sculpting, the colors, the tolerances on this guy are better than pretty much anything I've seen in Masterverse so far. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. One thing I like that they fixed from the Revelation version is actually giving him some sort of a strap in the back to store extra weapons. We know the Revelation version doesn't have that, so like he either has to hold his sword or just, I don't know, put it down. So I think this guy's honestly an improvement in every way. Now, you know, his, I guess, regular He-Man form, it's not going to be the most accurate thing in the world compared to, like, the classic design. They do have a 40th anniversary He-Man coming for that. That looks, you know, a lot more like the old toy. But I really think it doesn't matter. Like, the main details are there. It's only the small embellishments and stuff that are different. And I like it as a really realistic-looking take on the idea for He-Man, both in his Viking form and the regular form. So I highly recommend picking this guy up. Just there's so much coolness going on here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what else they do with New Eternia. We already know about the Skeletor. We know there's a Beast Man coming, and I think there's some others that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But I really like this idea going forward, and if they're all as good a value as this guy, being sold at the regular price point and having all this extra stuff, I'm down. Like, I think this is some of the best stuff they've put out in Masterverse so far. So I highly recommend picking this guy up when he becomes available in your area. Of course, that is just my take on this figure, so now I want to know what you all think of this new He-Man. Is this something you want? Have you always wanted to get that old Viking He-Man in toy form? Or do you just like the way this guy came out, you know, regardless of the history? Do you like the fact that he can swap between two different versions of himself? Or do you not like this? Maybe you're a bit more of a purist and you just want the original He-Man, or maybe you just don't like the way this came out. Maybe there's things you think they could have done better. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Masters of the Universe Masterverse New Eternia He-Man, aka Viking He-Man. And with all that said, I will see you next time.